Oh, we are live. Welcome everybody to Monday Night Live with Nathanial, Bibby, Neil Gibb, and Marshall, the King Charles Cavalier. Welcome everybody. You all know Marshall from last week because I know you're regular watchers. Marshall is he's been brought on board to increase our Instagram engagement, and he's doing wonders behind the scenes. Marshall's going to just go down for a little bit. He's a bit tired. I'd like to introduce my good friend Neil Gibb, who's the founder of the Perth Entrepreneurs Podcast, also happens to be a bit of a real estate mogul, affordable accommodation specialist, an investor and entrepreneur is his LinkedIn title, but I'll let Neil elaborate. Neil, can you tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah. Thanks, mate. It's thanks for having me on first and foremost. So we have a property investment business that specializes in real estate, and we do liking normal houses, 4, 5, and 6 bedroom investment properties, and we rent them out room by room, which doubles the rental income on that property and provides cash flow on a weekly and monthly basis for the investors.
Brilliant.
And from there, we kind of because all of our contacts were sort of in real estate communities on Facebook and on LinkedIn and places like that. And we realized that we didn't really know anybody outside of our real estate communities. So I was listening to a podcast, and they said, if you want to expand your community and expand your network, you should set up a podcast. Yes. And yeah, it kind of just became reality. But one day we said, let's do the podcast. Spoke to Crib Creative, making all the production and stuff like that. And before we know it, we have a podcast, and we are about 13 or 14 episodes in now.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And so you went straight into it and you stuck at it, which very few people do. Most people try 1 or 2 episodes. What have you found the main benefits of starting the Perth Entrepreneurs Podcast so far, given that it's still very early days?
Yeah, so like you said, we started it in the back end of January, and the main reason for starting it, like you say, was to expand our network and to meet new people that can potentially not just become friends, but become clients, become investors with us, and meet people like yourself. So I think
what episode am I? Episode 3 or 4, I think, wasn't it?
You're episode 4, yeah. So the saying, your network is your net worth, and every person we have on that podcast, we then leverage their network, so we just become more and more visible. It just spreads, doesn't it? Before you know, everybody knows who you are, and that's the main intention behind it. Yeah,
brilliant. And I guess what I found from doing my interviews with LinkedIn heroes, it's almost sometimes like you've got your own private sort of coaching session, and you can afford to be quite selfish with it and ask the questions that you want to know the answer to, can't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If you can share that information with everybody else, then it's a win-win, isn't it?
Yeah, and so aside from myself, obviously would have been your favorite. Who else have you? Who else did you really enjoy interviewing?
Every single interview has brought its own unique sort of feedback and learnings and friendship from it as well. So I'd probably say episode 1 with a guy called Dennis Beliveau was probably my one of my favorites, but also one of my scariest as well, because it was the first one. So the night before I actually did the interview, I had the worst night's sleep ever, and it was all down to nerves and overwhelm and everything else that comes with stepping out your comfort zone. And on the morning, I was actually going to cancel on Dennis, believe it or not. And I just sucked it up and went through with it. And we had a really good connection from the start. And he really just put his heart on the table and just went through his journey as an entrepreneur. We touched a little bit on when he went through some tough times after he sold his business and lost his purpose in his life, and then refound that purpose again by setting up another business and supporting and helping other entrepreneurs. So I'd say Dennis was second behind you.
Good answer. And I guess so, guys. If you're watching and you have got questions about real estate investment, what's going on in the property market, or starting a podcast, please do drop them in the comments, and we'll keep an eye on them as we go. But when I look down on my phone, I'm looking for your questions, so I'm not being rude. So I guess one of the questions that people might be wondering is, given that you're in the real estate investment space and you've started a podcast, not necessarily about real estate investment, it's about entrepreneurship. Have you had many guests on that are in similar industries to yourself?
Yes, I have. And when I started the podcast, I did say that I didn't want it to be property focused because there's already a few other property focused podcasts out there, and I was just going to meet more people in real estate, and that wasn't the intention behind the podcast. So if it was a property focused podcast, we wouldn't be having this conversation now because me and you wouldn't have connected.
That's right. Yeah.
So the two people in real estate that I have had on the podcast is one of my friends, Angad Singh, he's a builder and a property developer, but he's also a dentist, and he's established his own practices when he was young. And he's just got real entrepreneurial flair. Like everything he looks at, he thinks of it as a business concept.
Right.
And one of the other real estate people that we had on the podcast was a lady called Helena Farrell.
Right.
And when we first got into real estate, Helena was in one of the communities that we spoke about earlier, and she was probably one of the people that was sort of at the peak of that community. So she was out there, big high-end developments in the Subiacos. So she's always been an interesting person for me, and it was good to sit down with her and dig a little bit deeper into the backstory and find out how she became the woman that she is. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that you did quite well as well, which a lot of people don't consider, is you did pay close attention to the quality quite early on. I know we can give a plug to Crib Creative here, but in terms of the equipment and the experience, when you're interviewing people, can you share a bit about your concept there?
Yeah, absolutely. The team at Crib Creative have been absolutely phenomenal with the support that they give me all the way through this, from the first email when I contacted them to the constant support that I get week in, week out with production and the editing of the podcast. And, there was a small fee at the start, which basically worked on the logo for the podcast, and they recorded the intro and the outro for the podcast. They also selected the music for the podcast. Oh, well, I selected it, but they help you select it. And then each podcast that we do, before COVID, because at the minute we can't do any face-to-face interviews, which is a challenge in itself because you don't get that true connectivity that you're really aiming for. But yeah,
is that changing now?
Hopefully, mate. Yeah, I'll have to touch base with them and find out, because as of next Monday we can increase the amount of people in the building again. So yeah, hopefully we can get it back to normal.
WA is up to 20 people, isn't it?
As of Monday next week, yeah. So it'll be this time next week. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we can start getting things back to normal and start doing some face-to-face interviews again.
Yeah, well, I think cafes and restaurants are going to start opening again for up to 20 people. Be interesting to see if people are going into the city again, and I'm certainly looking forward to going in when the office gets back to normal.
Yeah, it's just a simple thing like going out for a meal or a pint. It's just, you forget how good it actually is, and you take it for granted.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I definitely love going out for a pint. Here we go. We've got. Let's see what questions we have. Okay. So Mercy's asked, or Marcy, I should say. Please advise me on how to start a podcast for a service like digital training and coaching. What advice would you give to somebody looking to get started?
I'd say know what your niche is, know your target audience and the type of content you're going to deliver. And then I'd just take action. Just link up with someone like Crib Creative or any other podcast producer that's out there, and just get 5 or 6 episodes in the bank, and then just commit to a release date. And once you're committed and once you've got the content there, there's no turning back. So just take action. It's as simple as that. My podcasts are far from perfect. I'm a big believer of one of my mentors says imperfect plan acted on is better than a perfect plan on the shelf. And that's basically what we live by. Just get it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a bit of buffering going on with the video, but the audio seems to be coming through okay.
Right.
So I think focusing on like a location specific, given that you're in real estate, I mean, you definitely defined that it was a Perth Entrepreneurs podcast. And I think anybody who's looking for local content, if they do a quick search, it's more likely to find you in the search results, aren't they?
Yeah. We wanted entrepreneur in the podcast so that if anybody does search entrepreneur, it's got one of them keywords in the title there. But we were told when we started the podcast that we couldn't have podcast in the title, which was confusing. So we actually called it the Perth Entrepreneurs Pep Talk because PEP was supposed to stand for Perth Entrepreneurs Podcast.
Yes, got it.
Yeah, we had to change it around a little bit, but we always refer to it as the Perth Entrepreneurs Podcast. Yeah,
well, I think my first website was linkedinleads.com. And I was quickly told that I wasn't allowed to have LinkedIn in the domain name. So I understand now. I've just got the T-shirt. I haven't been told off for that yet.
Cool.
And so going back to real estate, you've got quite a unique investment strategy. Have you found that things have been impacted much by COVID? And if so, like, is it more of a short-term impact or do you see a bigger impact?
Yeah. So when COVID kicked in, we had a little bit of a panic, as I think everybody did, because nobody knew what was coming and we'd never experienced anything like this before. And the type of accommodation we provide is for people that are either trying to establish themselves or they're trying to save money, or people that just can't afford to get on the property ladder and this becomes a way of living for them. So we had quite a few tenants that are in retail and hospitality. Mm-hmm. So obviously when them people were affected, they contacted us and said that they couldn't afford to pay the rent because they'd lost their jobs or they'd had the hours reduced. But the good thing about our strategy is that because you've got 5 or 6 different rental incomes coming from the same property, if one person stops paying or can't pay, you've still got 4 or 5 other people that are still paying rent. So as far as affecting your pocket, it takes your cash flow takes a little bit of a dip. But yeah, it's just short term, and we had a few people had to leave the country too. So I think the Canadian government pulled back all Canadians back overseas. So we lost 2 or 3 Canadian tenants there. But we filled the rooms virtually straight away because all of a sudden everybody's looking for ways to save money, and accommodation is that big reoccurring weekly sort of cost that you can easily save money on.
Yeah, understood. Okay, let's see what other questions we've got come through here. Righty. There's always a little bit of a delay. Here we go. The name, Harvey Lynch has asked, what's the name of the production company Neil spoke of? That was Crib Creative. And another question came through. What's the best platform you could recommend for the podcast? Do you know, or do they publish it for you?
They publish it through a platform called Libsyn.
Oh, yeah.
And we currently push it out only to Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but we're going to increase that to Stitcher and Patreon too, just to get out on some more platforms. And, after I interviewed you and you sent me through all the little snippets of all the micro content that you created, we've been in the back of our minds. We've been thinking, wow, we need to do something like that ourselves. So we've just in the last few days took some steps to start sending all that vocal and some of the video content that we've got to send that away to create some little micro snippets. Which we could start some advertising on.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. When I went in to see Neil, I was feeling a bit creative, and I just decided to put my phone on record and just lean it against the mug there or whatever it was. And that content turned out really well. It's sort of like a little bit like a fly on the wall sort of content. We could create a few videos out of that. It was awesome.
Yeah. And again, I get my inspiration from seeing other people do things. So when you went in and got your phone out and started recording it, the next interview, I bought a tripod and I got my phone out and I just recorded the full interview and got some good footage from it. So just, it's again, it all goes back to that main reason for starting it. It's just to expand your knowledge base and expand your network.
Yeah, I'm just having a sip out of my LinkedIn mug. It's actually empty. It's just an ornament because it's I'm right-handed and this is left-handed. So there you go. Anyway, sorry to get distracted. Let's see if there's any more questions. All righty. We got quite a good turnout. It's good to see a lot of people on the call. A lot of people asking if you'd like to connect on LinkedIn.
How is your podcast going with Brooke?
Yeah, great. Yeah. Yeah, we're very amateur, I think. I think it's more entertaining than anything else, but we're getting a lot of hits. Yeah. I mean, we both, from LinkedIn and Instagram, we both, get quite a lot of click through from there. I noticed Apple and Spotify are the two main ones. I'm a Samsung user, so I use Spotify. Have you found that there's one that performs better than the other?
Well, I've been told by the girls in the Crib Creative Office that all the younger generation are Spotify people, and all those oldies, if you want to call us that, we're the Apple Podcast users. So I don't know if we can physically track the metrics through which platform gets the most downloads, or maybe I just haven't dug into it enough, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure they would. Yeah, Lipsin, if I pronounce it correctly, is quite. It's got quite a lot of analytics, I think. Certainly more. I use Anchor, which is free, and they tell you how many listeners you have on each platform. Don't tell you how many downloads, which I know is the statistic that a lot of podcasters look at. And then Neil, I've seen you at a couple of my events. You've been involved with Kerr and Ray, as I am, and you're at Certified Ballers. So you've been diving into the social media as well. Can you tell us a bit about your experience on social media and where you found the best traction?
Yeah, you're probably not going to like this answer because I'm a Facebook user, not more than a LinkedIn user. But yeah, the reason that I keep going to these events and getting this feedback is we want to scale our businesses. We want to scale my own personal brand and just become more known so people trust us and want to work with us. And at the start, it is pretty nerve-wracking, and you procrastinate like crazy because putting yourself out there, it's nerve-wracking, really, isn't it? Sometimes, but you get it out there. As long as you deliver some decent content, you get some good feedback, and it sort of gets that momentum going, so that you carry on. Similar to the podcast, that first one, I was so scared. Well, just really, really nervous for the first one, but now I really look forward to the interviews because I create that friendship with the person that I'm speaking to. So,
yeah. I can see that a lot of people will relate to that. Like, it is quite nerve-wracking putting yourself out there, and you've done a great job of being consistent. So I'll put you on a spot here a little bit, but so there's a story that I heard, because I wasn't actually there at the time, but Brooke Volinovich, who I do the LinkedIn versus Instagram podcast with. Yep. She singled you out at Certified Ballers, didn't she? Can you tell us a bit about that?
She did, mate. Yes. Thanks, Brooke, for that. So basically, like I said, I've always used Facebook for probably the last 12, 13 years. And I went to Certified Ballers, and Brooke was there doing an Instagram speech. And she said, does anybody in the room not know how to do Instagram stories? So I put my hand up, just thinking heaps of other people were going to put their hands up. And I turned around, and it was like me in the room with my hand up like this. It was like, stand up. And then just tore shreds off me, basically. But yeah, I got some good feedback from Brooke, got some good tips. And we went out there and started doing some stories, and we got some good feedback from them too.
Yeah, awesome. I'll just have one more quick look, see if there's any questions that we can address. There's a bit of a delay, so we won't be able to get to all of them live, unfortunately. I'm still. Oh, so just one question, Neil. Do you have a Facebook group that you use?
I do, yes. Yeah, the page and the group are called the Perth Entrepreneurs Podcast.
Okay, and you find that the groups work well?
We probably get more traction through the page currently.
Okay.
But the page is there, the group is there. That community can be built up over time, and it'd be good to actually get some value from that. Not for myself, but for the other people in that group too. Maybe we could set up some sort of entrepreneurial sort of support group where people can talk about their ideas freely and get help and support and guidance from other people that have been there and done that. That would be pretty handy.
Yeah. Well, I know Kim at Certified Ballers was saying that Facebook groups there's going to be some new releases there, and there's something to watch. So I've got my eye on it closely. Well, as close enough. Yeah.
I've got Kim going on the podcast on Friday, actually.
Oh, have you? Oh, cool. Well, you can ask him then.
Yeah.
He said I interviewed him live at one of my meetups. He said he's got a relationship with Facebook and he's not allowed to disclose too much. So you can put him on the spot, see if you can get some more info out of him.
Absolutely, mate. I'm going to drill him. Yeah, because he is. I think he's got his own social media, his own Facebook connection that works direct for Facebook that he communicate with and give feedback on all their beta testing.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that's interesting. Neil, one of the questions you asked me when you interviewed me on your podcast, I've been dying to ask you, so I'm going to use this opportunity. What's one of the books that you've read that's had a big impact on your business career?
There's been quite a few, mate. I'm a bit of an avid reader, and I listen to a lot of Audible books as well on Audible. Yep. So I'd probably say the biggest one that probably started all of the investing stuff for me was probably Think and Grow Rich. Followed very closely by Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and they kind of linked in together, and that sort of went. It's just sparked in me, and after that, I was just.
How long's the HMO Property Code been going for?
HMO Property Code has been going for about 2 years now, but we were only doing our own properties to start with at the start, so we've probably been doing HMOs in general for probably 3 years now. Yeah,
okay, and you've had some dramatic growth, haven't you?
Yeah, last year was insane, to be honest. We had such a busy year. And we were that busy, we kind of, as a typical entrepreneur, we just forgot to celebrate the wins along the way. And it wasn't until we went to Bali at the end of the year to sort of relax and put our feet up and do some goal setting for the year coming, like 2020. And we looked back at we basically made a list of all the things that we'd done, and we were blown away by the amount of projects that we'd done, the growth that we'd seen. And that we were looking forward to taking that into this year. And I think what's happened over the last few weeks has only been just a speed hump. I think we'll get back to normal pretty soon.
Yeah,
we've got plenty of projects in the pipeline, and we're looking for more projects for ourselves too.
Fantastic. Oh, well, look, Neil, thanks for joining me on Monday Night Live. It's nice to turn the tables and me interview you for once.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We'll have to wrap it up there because we've been geez, it seems like we've only been chatting for 5 minutes, but it's 24 minutes. Neil, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best place for them to do it, and how do they find the Perth Entrepreneurs Podcast?
They can reach out to me at Facebook, Neil Gibb. I'm pretty active on there, or LinkedIn if you want to message me on LinkedIn. And the Perth Entrepreneur Podcast is available on Apple Podcasts. Just type in Perth Entrepreneur and it should pop up.
Yep, and for the younger generation, Spotify.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
All right, guys. Well, look, thanks for listening. If you have any questions that you would like us to cover in next week's episode, drop them in the comments. Otherwise, we'll see you next week, Monday night, 6 p.m. Perth time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks, Neil. We appreciate you coming to join us.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.